Hello and welcome back to the biggest week of the DP World Tour picks and bets. Skylar, Hoke here, Tom Jacobs. How we feeling?
It's good. It's good to be at this tournament. I will sort of precursor it with I'm a little bit apprehensive of whether negativity will take over in terms of the tournament a little bit, in the sense that we've got 18 guys from the other tour coming in, or 17 guys coming in, and it feels like that's going to dominate some headlines. I hope it doesn't, because I think this is we've got the best of both. From a pure betting perspective, from a pure golf enjoyment perspective, this is a really strong field, a really enjoyable field, and it's been well supported for all the reasons. So I think it's got the opportunity to be a really good event.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. We're sitting here Tuesday afternoon recording a day later. Thank you all for still your support. Labor Day yesterday in the States. So we're recording Tuesday afternoon, and we have heard some spicy comments all around. Mainly today's news is based off of Billy Horschel's comments this morning. John Rahm also commenting how these players should not be allowed into the biggest event that the DP World Tour has. I believe we have 18 live golfers teeing it up this week. Some comments I've seen as well, like Richard Manziel, upset he's not in the field. Not upset, but stating that he's disappointed to not be in the field, which seems odd when you see a golfer of his standings, 46th on the alternate list. Even if the 18 live golfers weren't here, he would probably not be teeing it up still without an exemption. So there might be a bigger crisis to look at when it comes to kind of priority rankings. But there was meetings with Pelly yesterday, right? Or conversations with Pelly from Lee Westwood, Poulter. A lot of things flowing. It's going to get pretty spicy this week.
It's going to get. I haven't actually seen Billy Horschel. What did Billy Horschel say?
He pretty much said there shouldn't be golfers like Taylor Gooch. He said Jason Kokrak, which was funny since Jason's not even here today. And Abraham Answer, he just kind of singled out those golfers as they should not, be allowed. Pretty much.
I do kind of get that, because they're players that never would have played in this event, whereas at least the guys like Lee Westwood and Ian Poulter and such would have played anyway, wouldn't they? So
that was his thing. He's like, they've never supported the DP World Tour before, so
right.
why show up now when you've never teed it up? So because you're getting a few of them.
Yeah, the way I sort of saw it was that they're all just kind of showing a united front, and they're all going to kind of take advantage of the world ranking points and stuff like that. But it's a messy situation. It's one that I just hope. I mean, I've kind of decided to stop talking about it on Twitter in terms of live versus other tours and stuff like that. And to be honest, I haven't really been paying too much attention to it. I saw that obviously DJ and Cameron Smith were heavily involved, but I haven't really been watching it. So we had a really good tournament on the DP World Tour last week. One of our favourites, obviously, won in Oliver Wilson. Which is a great story, right? And one that should be celebrated, and it was really nice to see. We've had some comments from Kiradech Afid-Barmrat, who's in the field this week, who got some nice reception on Twitter after sort of sharing his thoughts of being a bit lonely on the PGA Tour. And I think that's the biggest thing I've heard from players in the past that I've spoken to, that the camaraderie between the DP World Tour and the PGA Tour is very, very different. The PGA Tour is very not selfish, but people are just doing their own thing, and that's, I think, based on the fact that there's a lot of Americans and a lot of people that can sort of stay at home and not have to share houses and things like that, whereas on the DP World Tour you kind of have to mix in. So I think there's a lot of logistical things that aren't necessarily anybody's fault. I wonder what's going to come out of those conversations with Keith Pelly. I don't imagine much, because I don't necessarily trust Keith Pelly to do anything. Tough one, really, really tough one. I think they had this. I don't think we've said this before. I don't think the strategic alliance has worked out very well for the DP World Tour, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we should just jump to the other side either. So, lots to unpack. But I would rather Sky just focus on the tournament we've got in front of us, and just enjoy it, because at the end of the day, it's a loaded field with a really good golf course.
Yeah, I completely agree. You could spend hours on every angle possible, and we potentially might not get to see this combination of golfers outside of majors, and maybe not even. We don't know yet. So there, from a talent perspective, there definitely are. Live live golfers that are making this field quite elevated. You can see it on the odds board. But no, I do want to say congratulations to your boy last week. You've been riding hard for Ollie. So for him to win like he did, I mean, that was it didn't feel, and I wasn't as dialed in with the holiday weekend, but didn't feel as much of a DP World Tour Sunday as we've gotten in the past. Guys charged, guys made moves, held strong, made some clutch holes to finish out. I mean, we almost saw Ewan Ferguson win 2 and 3 starts. We saw, I thought Pelly Kilda was really there in the mix. I thought Nicholas Norgard Mahler was going to be in the mix till he shot a 10 on his last hole on Friday. But that is one of my favorite tournaments all year. I do really like Hammerland.
Yeah, it was a really good tournament, and to your point, I would say when you were saying like I don't think anyone really kind of threw it away. I think Hilly was probably the one that would be potentially disappointed in what he did Sunday. Like he was pretty disappointing. Having said that, he still shot 68. Like it wasn't like a terrible event. He's only one worse than Oliver Wilson, but it felt like he could have done better. Ewan Ferguson couldn't really have done much else. Like he shot 500 in the final round and had already shot a 63 on the open day and lost. And Oliver Wilson, yes, he made those big putts, 65 footer and 67 footer, whatever, but he'd missed a bunch of 4 or 5 footers as well. So I think ultimately probably the right person won in the end, although those on Ewan Ferguson would potentially disagree. But we had some of the guys that we kind of pointed out. Christian Crowe Johansson, I was glad he didn't win in third place. I was also glad that Ross McGowan didn't win after tipping at 350 to 1 last week as well. But I think you kind of mentioned Matthew Southgate. We talked about Laporta coming back to form as well. So I think Von Dellinghausen, I sort of said that I thought he could come back and didn't necessarily know why, and he did. So I think Tom Lewis was there after, we've been sort of talking about him for a couple of weeks. So I think overall, we had a really good beat on it without really having much of a chance of winning. So overall, I thought it was a good event, good one to watch, and good one for us to take some stock from.
Yeah, Crowe Johansson getting into the field this week too. That one probably would have stung the worst because that was the one we discussed it. The number was probably correct, but one of the first times we've laid off a golfer like that, and for him to be the best of any of them so far this season, showed nails on the weekend. Realistically, a lot of good golf being played. But yeah, let's switch over. Let's get into the BMW PGA Championship. For those that might be hopping over for one of the first times, or might have done it last week, this is the premier event for the DP World Tour. As you can see by the field, we're going to be at Wentworth Club, which has been hosting this event for as long as it's really been around, and it's, I guess I would say, the Players Championship of what the PGA Tour hosts, where this is the premier event. So from a course perspective, how would you break down what's ahead of us this week?
Yeah, so it's really very heavily tree lined, and it is tough. Like I think that you look at the scores and you look at 19 under, 19 under, 20 under, 17 under over the last 4 years, and I think that's a real nod towards just how good these are at golf. When you go back to 21 under for Benny And in 2015, like there is some proper danger out there. Like there's some tight holes. There's it's going to be a little bit softer this week, so I think that's going to help. But yeah, I think just ultimately it rewards those guys that have those strong irons. I don't think you can come into this event off your game. I think one of the things it does do is it brings everybody in. Like I think it allows shorter hitters, longer hitters, great scramblers, great drivers. I think ultimately what it is, Sky, is that like if you're in form, you can take advantage of this golf course. And you look at that through the past, and Laurie Cantor was second here last year, probably should have won. He was obviously in great form, didn't win. You look at Tyrrell Hatton beating Victor Perez, 2 guys in good form. Danny Willett beating John Rahm. Again, these are premier players, really, for the most part. Francesco Molinari, 2018. I mean, what a year he had that year. Goes and wins this tournament over Rory McIlroy. Like you just see from the players and who they do. Chris Wood won in 2016. I think that was the year that he was in the Ryder Cup. It might have been 2 years after he was in the Ryder Cup. I can't remember now. I think was that the Hazeltine one that he was in?
So he was 50 to 1 that week. I mean, he was coming in right before him. He had a really good finish the year before too. Yeah. So I believe 16 would have been Hazeltine, yes.
Yeah, so ultimately it does seem to reward those that are in good form. I mean, we've seen people like Simon Kahn losing the playoff. We've seen Simon Kahn win in 2010. Like there are course specialists, but I think ultimately, you have to go back to kind of like 2004, where it was Scott Drummond for a time where you'd get a really surprising winner. So it does reward the elites, does reward those in good form. And I think ultimately I would probably focus on irons more than anything else.
Yeah, one of my favorite wins of all time is Ben An winning here in 2015. Just when you go through kind of the list. I mean, it was a runaway too. I believe he won by 6 that year over Jimenez and JD. So I think if I had to classify, I mean, to your point, I mean, irons, but if I look at some of the golfers that have played, I mean, Horschel, kind of course specialist winning last year, Molinari, Ben Ann, just kind of golfers like that. I mean, even Hatton in a sense. I mean, it is a fairway green ball striking type of attack, one you can't truthfully overpower in the way a lot of courses have been. So
No.
I think it absolutely brings everybody with a chance from a skill set. But if I had to really tailor make it for any type of player, somebody who is above accurate with their driving and then really strong at hitting greens, and of course, you do have to score. One of the best finishes I would say on tour that you get, because it's back-to-back par fives. So
Really
you have
fun.
those. Yep. So you get to have those courses, and then or that finish to the course, and it just brings so much into play from that standpoint.
Yeah, and I just think I think ultimately you do get the right winner overall. Like, you could argue Effie Barnrat should have won last year. You could argue Laurie Cantor should have won, but at the end of the day, Billy Horschel then stuck his third shot to within a few feet and rolled in that birdie putt to win on the final hole. Like, yes, people can melt down here. Like, there is so much, I wouldn't say so much trouble, but it's such a visually demanding golf course in the sense that I feel like you can stand up on the tee and be a little bit worried about it. Like, I've walked around it and sometimes you think like, this is a really tough shot, and then sometimes you watch them hit shots and you think, where are they going with that? And then they sort of get the ball in. So I think ultimately it's a real scorer's paradise. Like, scrambling is going to be important. I always kind of think of I thought like John Catlin and Aaron Ryan, people like that would do well here, which I'm sure we'll come on to sort of later on. But like, they don't necessarily. It's a tough one because I wonder whether you can overcome bad course form here as long as you've got good course history in the sense that you've played it a lot or played it a few times. Like, if you've played it once or twice and you've played it well, then fine. If you're in really good form, which we're going to come on to a couple of players, then fine. If you've played it 5 or 6 times and never really eclipsed kind of like 30th, 20th, but you're in good form, I think it's a course that you can take advantage of. So I wouldn't necessarily get too caught up in bad course figures.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. We haven't seen Ben Ann was his debutante. We haven't seen a winner in their first performance in a little bit of time. So I think that is interesting when we talked about some of the live golfers that we come to. But yeah, man, it's just our biggest week of the year, realistically. And that was rewarded with DraftKings as well. They did come through. We now have $50,000 to first place in the pitch and putt this week on the DP World Tour. And then also there's another contest signature hole that has $20,000 to first place. Last year's winner, was our friend Axis in that contest last year. He played Billy Horschel, I think, at 2% last year in the contest.
Which is wild, right? Because he'd finished 4th on debut as well. That seems like a really smart play from Brian there. And I'm glad that we get to revel in a success of his.
Yes, absolutely. So without further ado, I'll always ask and remind you to give us support on our YouTube page. You can find us Mayo Media Network there on YouTube. Give us a like, a subscribe, always in the comments. We appreciate that. And then we also available on all audio platforms. So you can find that daily fantasy sports picks and bets, the mix. So rate, review, subscribe, 5 stars goes a really long way to continue support of this show. And like I said, this is kind of our big week. So hopefully we can come through and a listener can win big here for us and we can get some outrights. But if we dive into the odds board, and I guess we can kind of go hand in hand with DraftKings too, as that clear standalone, I guess, 3, I would say, when we get to the odds boards. I think these guys kind of separate, but of course, Rory McIlroy 6-1, the longest odds you can find him. John Rahm 8-1, and I'll loop in Fitzy 11-1. Kind of all falls into that same mix there, and of course, the 3 most expensive. Actually, no. A little bit of lower price on Fitz. If you, I guess, included another golfer, Shane Lowry would fall into there, with those 4 being the clear priced high up DraftKings players. Who's your pick there of the litter? Or would you go contrarian again? Because I think people might overlook Horschel once again.
So I'm going with Horschel. I'm all in on Horschel in terms of betting, in terms of DFS. Again, hopefully, I don't think we're going to get 2% again right, but I think that we will get low ownership because everyone wants to play Rory, everyone wants to play John Rahm, everyone wants to play Lowry and Fitzpatrick, and for good reason, right? Like, I think Rory is the epitome of what we've kind of just said about the golf course, that like it rewards good form and not necessarily something that you can just follow on course history. Because you look at his finishes here, he's got a win, he's got a second, and he's got a 5th and a 9th, but he's also got 3 missed cuts, the 24th and the 48th, which you wouldn't necessarily see out of someone like Rory McIlroy on other courses as well. So I think on a course where his driving could get him into trouble, do you think, Sky, and I know we don't talk about this too much, but do you think he's going to be so distracted by what's going on and get himself so worked up that can affect it? I guess you're trying too hard to judge into the psychology of someone that we know nothing about.
Yeah. Well, I think he's won the 2 biggest opportunities on the PGA Tour when the distractions were the highest.
Yeah.
So I do feel of golfers, he's quite motivated. And I guess that is, I think that's the conversation with it all, is if you can correctly identify the mental state and how it affects certain golfers. Are the live golfers super motivated to really plant a flag at this kind of type of event? I also think that too, so yeah. I guess I'm trying not to overthink it in that manner because I could see it playing positive, or at least motivating for both sides.
Right, and that's what I said, that I just want to treat it as an event, because ultimately if you try and dive into those, one of them's going to offset the other. And like you say, Rory has performed really well under pressure, and it almost frustrates me that he doesn't do that week to week, because you're like, well, if you can play with your back up against the wall like that, then you probably should do it more often. And he has done it this year, to be fair. He's been, from a strokes gained total point of view, really, really good. So I would say, of the bunch, I'd probably be the weariest about Jon Rahm, and only because, he's shown a little bit of life recently, and he's got a second here on his debut and not played it otherwise. But I think he's the type that can run himself into trouble around this golf course, get frustrated very quickly, and lose it. So Shane Lowry, very safe, plays here all the time, generally finishes top 20 every year, has, of course, finished second to Rory McIlroy, I think it was, the year that he finished second, and really should have won. He was in great form that day. So I think he's probably the safest. He hasn't finished outside the top 17 in his last 5 starts at Wentworth. So I would say he's the safest. Fitz, I really don't know. I really don't know what to do with Fitz. I think that one of those things where this is the first time I feel like he's a completely different golfer since he's been at Wentworth. I think he's elevated his game once more. Never missed a cut here. Never finished worse than 47th, but also never finished higher than 7th. So is there a ceiling to what he can do around his golf course? I don't think so. I think he could probably win it very easily. But yeah, I think if I had to pick one, it would be Billy Horschel, followed probably by Rory McIlroy. Yeah,
I have much more interest in Fitz, I think.
Yeah.
Mainly kind of the price. He's $10,200 when I think he's the clear 3rd best golfer in the field for me. When you look at Rory Rahm, I think Fitzy is way closer to those guys than what Shane Lowry has played this year. So you're getting a heavy discount on Fitzy, and if he can drive it as accurate as he has with that distance, it's him and Rory, it is.
And in 2020, he was the 36 hole leader. He shot 67, 65, right, and then shot 76 on Saturday. So if you believe that Fitz doesn't do that anymore, which I think is probably a reasonable assessment, I don't think he does blow it as much anymore. I don't think he ever really did on the DP World Tour. That was probably a pretty big surprise of that 76 on that Saturday. And you're talking about a bit of added length for the first time since he's come back here. Whilst we don't think that is necessarily the most important thing, it's only a bonus.
Correct. Yep. But I definitely have. It was very difficult for me to not bet Horschel this week. I think it just kind of came down to a little bit of a number, and really because the other number that I thought stood out on the board was for Victor Hovland. Victor Hovland, you can get him. We're doing this on Tuesday, so the numbers have shifted, but he was 25-1 yesterday in some spots here stateside. Even at the 20-1 number, it just feels, even though, I guess until the Open Championship, Victor really didn't have much to his name on the stretch run of golf this summer. It just feels that he deserves to be in a different class, and those odds. And if his driving is just so good, it's just so good from a total driving standpoint. He is way more accurate than many golfers of the distance that he has. We know he can get lights out with the irons. He has flashed them a little bit. Tour Championship was some good irons for him. Just hasn't really put it all together outside of the first 54 holes of the Open Championship. Does the short game worry us? Of course, it does. But if short game has to play a factor this week, you aren't contending. So you do have to pepper these greens here to really give yourself a shot. I mean, you have to save some, of course, but I think 20-1, and especially on DraftKings, and he'll probably end up pulling in a decent bit of ownership where the Horschel pivot would probably make even more sense there. But $9,600 for Victor Hovland, I really like that. And then at 20-1, he is where I'm starting my card too.
So I think if you'd have asked me this last year, like, talent alone, Victor Hovland and Billy Horschel shouldn't be the same price, right?
Correct.
It's just it just seems to be that Horschel, because Horschel never stands out from a statistical point of view. He just seems to, he has what I sort of class as just being able to get it done. Like, he gets in the mix and does it right. And I think this is one where as I've sort of said in recent shows, I kind of steered away from course form a little bit and tried not to factor that too much in.
Yep. But
it just seems so like unavoidable for me with Horschel, like fourth and first, like, and both times he's shot 2 rounds of 65, so it just seems like a really comfortable golf course for him. Something about the eye suits his eye. He has a really good time. He has all the West Ham footballers there and the pro-am, stuff like that. So just for this course, I do give him the edge over Hovland. But Hovland's been fine. He finished 11th on his debut in 2019 and 49th last year. So there's no reason to think he can't cope with the course. It just depends if he's got those 4 rounds in him.
Yep. I agree. I think you can. They've priced it in, in regards to some of the course history, when potentially you could have gotten the numbers on Billy last year if you were willing to take the plunge before other people felt comfortable.
Right.
Now, where I think DraftKings gets very interesting, and kind of there's a bunch of golfers in the next range here of it, is it's presented itself in the majors already, and it probably will remain the same this week too, is you don't know how to class form when it comes to playing live golf. Does Taylor Gooch continuing to be top 10 in accuracy and greens and regulation and in his finishes, and then showing out through 36 holes of the Open Championship and being there, like, is he deserving of the price? Is he in that type of form? Because I would think he would be a good golfer for this style, of course, the way he plays. I think if people are going to jump around, if they're going to go to Hatton, if they're going to go to Fleetwood because they've seen the history here, they know what they're doing, if they're going to go up and play Victor, like, I think Gooch in the 9 could be a spectacular DraftKings play, because you just don't know what these guys are in and if there's that motivation factor. But if I just think as a pure golfer, I think there's a lot in Gooch. And we said this at the Open Championship. I mean, he was 150s, 200s at the Open Championship. It was some deep numbers. So he really stands out from maybe a DraftKings play. But I really think if I had to make one golfer picture perfect for Wentworth Club, who would I say from a skill set fits it unbelievably? I'm not sure there's more golfer in the world than Abraham Answer. Like, I realistically think he is such a good driver, and it really comes from being one of the most accurate golfers in the entire world. He flushes the irons. He comes out top 10s, the Open Championship, or maybe it was 11th. Does really, really well at the Open Championship, has been fine in the live golf events. He was okay this past week. I don't need any excellence out of that, but man, if I had to, and he stayed out of the headlines too. He's not one of these guys who's been chirping or saying he made a business decision. He has stepped back and hasn't said really one thing the entire time. So I think of golfers that I am really, really interested in the live side, I think that Abraham Answer far and away is my favorite selection there. $8,700, and then I think he's as short as 37-1 now. But standalone, I think he is my favorite play on the board.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of good points on Taylor Gooch. We've seen him play some really tough golf courses really well. The only thing I would say about him, I don't know if he performs a little bit better when it's a bit more exposed, like a little bit more wind comes into it and things like that. But I do think he's a great call. Like, of the guys playing live in this field, like, he's the guy I think you can hang your hat on and say he's playing good golf. Like, I don't think you can deny it. I think Answer has been up and down, but again, he shot that final around 65 at St Andrews. He's obviously playing decent golf. I think you're going to get a real insight this week on who's playing well. Like, I don't think it's fair to say what they did at St Andrews was a deciding factor on what kind of form they're in, because it's a tough golf course. Links can be on the wrong side of the draw, etc. This is a perfectly good test for everybody. It gives everyone the same sort of test, and I think it's a really good time for Answer and Gooch to step up. Now, is that going to please some people? Probably not. I think you're right that Answer has stayed out of it. I think there's there's certain players that people will accept it from, and there's certain ones that don't, right? And it's just as simple as that. Like, he came out very early and was just like, it's a business decision, sticking by it, never came out and said anything else. Someone like Joaquin Neiman, who 2 months ago said I don't know where all these rumors are coming from, it's frustrating, and then joining doesn't lend himself to support. One thing I would say is I don't guarantee because I'm not going to be there, but I would imagine a lot of these fans seeing Gooch for the first time, seeing Answer for the first time, they're going to be well supported, I think. But I think there's a lot of people that just don't get involved in the politics. Like, we're in probably a bit of an echo chamber in terms of Twitter that, like, I think Patrick Reed, for example, will be pretty well followed. Like, are they going to get booed? Probably not. Like, I don't think we saw that much of it at the Open. We saw a bit for Ian Poulter maybe, but Ian Poulter's always been a divisive character anyway. So I think he, to your point, I think Answer's probably the safest player. He's the one that fits the profile the most of the LIV guys.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think there's a big stretch there in the $8,000 range. So Answer's 8,700. Right below him, Sergio. Above him, Patrick Reed. Now, Patrick Reed, if you talked about Billy Horschel having the continued course comfort, I mean, Reed is top 5 both his events here. Yeah. Could he be another DraftKings pivot if golfers or if players aren't going to jump on, potentially under-owned guys? You don't really know with his LIV form. It has not been quite good really at all. Sergio's there. Brandon Grace, a winner of a LIV event, is there. Also played decent in the Open Championship. Lee Westwood missing out on a playoff by a stroke yesterday when it was Sunday on a absolutely abysmal bogey on the last hole. There was a great quote on Shotgun Start. I want to see if I can find it exactly here. Maybe Lee, if he listens to this, will be blocking us. But it was basically saying, I've never heard, the most legitimizing indicator yet that this is not a meaningless hit and giggle, but rather some form of competition was a trademark Lee Westwood gag, which happened on his last hole yesterday, where he was in the middle of the fairway and he threw it right in the bunker when he needed birdie to win outright, and then he bogeys, misses the playoff. Which is kind of funny to me, but Lee has shown some form and some life in the events. He had an opening round, 66, I think, at St. Andrews, top 5. He's priced up quite a bit, but if you're willing to take the risk on some of these golfers being in form, there are decent, prices on them from DraftKings and probably an ownership discount too. Now, we each have selections from an outright standpoint in this range too. Mine's a little bit higher than yours, so I'll go next. The Korn Ferry Tour Finals was simultaneously happening, which I think the Korn Ferry Tour Finals and the ending stretch of the regular season is as good as it gets in all of golf. Like that is pressure. That is do or die. My job is on the line type of golf, which is so fun. And one of the golfers that delivered more than anybody in all of it was Dean Burmeister. Dean Burmeister with 2 out of 3 events, finishing in the top 5. He also made the cut in the second one. We saw golfers like Dietrich and Matty Schmid, who were also in this tournament. They had performances early on enough that basically guaranteed themselves cards. And when it was like 95%, both those guys were getting cards early, and they just melted the rest of the Korn Ferry Tour Finals, which was kind of sad in the sense that they could have pushed and locked themselves up. So do you have a breath of relief when you lock up your card, or do you keep pushing? And Dean Burmeister had an excellent week, 65 on Sunday this past week, hit every green in regulation. What really stood out to me for Dean is last week he was top 10 in accuracy along with greens in regulation. I don't think Dean seems to be the best course fit because he is more driven from a driver standpoint when it comes to his game versus just being lights out with the irons. But he has had 2 top 12 performances of his first 2 events here at Wentworth, and he had a 30th last year where he showed a little bit of life. So I think that stretch of golf, now is it going to be a lot to come all the way from where they were playing in Indiana, get all the way to Wentworth? But he's got familiarity here. They'll figure it out, But if I had to say, when we talked about Thurston Lawrence, when he won, another golfer who really stood out during that stretch run of the Open Championship, the Scottish, the Irish, Dean Burmeister was one of the best golfers. I am very interested in betting that 66-1 that is out there. And then DraftKings, I would say he is right there with Answer as my favorite play on the week. $8,300 for him. Huge into Dean.
Yeah, and I think one of the things. So there's two golfers, and I'll go into Steve Burmester first, as you sort of led on to him. Is that in his debut he finished ninth, like you said, and he closed with a 65. So it was really only a second round 76 that kind of put stop to his kind of chances. He opened with a 69, was inside the top 15. Finishes 12th the following year, opens with a 66 to be, one back of the leader, and then closes with a 67. Again, just having middling rounds, which I do think is a potential concern. Then last year, he actually just shot 4 rounds of 70, which must be kind of mind-numbing for a player. The person I categorise him with is Thomas Peters. And Thomas Peters is got a 27th, a 14th, 37th, 62nd, 9th against 3 missed cuts here. And the reason I categorise them both together is the point you've already made. Like their strengths are their driving, but they both have the capability to get one hot irons and a hot putter as well. So I think the upside is there for both of them to shoot the lowest round of a day on any given day. I just wonder if they can put it 4 rounds together. So I think I was edging towards Burmester at the 2 because of the slightly bigger outright price and and a slight discount on DraftKings anyway. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I think they're both worthy of a play in lineups. I don't think you should leave them out entirely. It's just one, ownership, and 2, whether you could. I think there is some volatility to both.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. They can both be in contention. They could both be packed up Friday afternoon. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if Peters pulls. The 8Ks is just very intriguing to me overall. I'm not sure I have the ability. I don't think I'm really into Sergio on the week, and Rose is probably priced up. But
Sergio never played here before anyway. So I think he finished like 19th one year and played pretty well. It should be a really good Sergio Garcia course, right? I saw Matt Vincenzi asked why he doesn't play it. He just doesn't like the event for whatever reason. I guess it's a little bit tough for him. He just gets fed up. I don't know. Maybe just a little bit of like, I don't have to be there, so whatever type of thing. I'm not sure. There's 3 guys in here that I thought I could really put a line through, and that was Jordan Smith. I thought was really highly priced. I thought that Sergio Garcia was worth putting a line through. I don't know, it's just those 2 guys, I think, actually, in the 8Ks that are definitively out for me.
Yeah, I think Smith would make a ton of sense, but he is definitely in a different category when it comes to price, unfortunately, because I could see him carrying over. But let's talk about the last golfer in the 8Ks. One, if you mentioned just straight course form, his performance, I guess, it was no surprise when he won in Wentworth, when he was having one of the best years of golf we have really seen in a long time. So to see Francesco Molinari for the first time since the Open Championship, that was the only question mark I had, but he had a good Open. And then you're on him this week at some pretty good numbers.
Yes, I think I counted it's 13 times. I may have miscounted, but basically he missed a cut on debut and then he's never missed a cut since. So his worst performance since then was 55th, but he's also had a first and a second in back-to-back years, or second to a first. And then before that, he had 4 straight top 10s. Last 2 starts here, 14th and 35th, either side of COVID when he didn't play. And to your point, like I wouldn't have played him. I would have definitely chalked him up as like this kind of is a course form trap if it wasn't for how well he played at the Open Championship. Like he was really good there. He finished 15th, shot rounds of 66 and 68 over the weekend. That was coming off 2 missed cuts at the US Open and Scottish Open. Before that, 26th place at the Memorial Tournament, where he was 4th after 54 holes as well. So shot that final round 78, which I think showed some of the rust that he has in contention. But I think, a really familiar course. I think one thing we've got to maybe factor in is the fact that the Ryder Cup points start this week. And he's obviously going to be keen to, 1, play himself into form for next week for the Italian Open, and 2, play himself into form for that Ryder Cup standings to play in Italy. So I think there's a lot on the line, and that can go one or 2 ways. It can stress him out and be a problem, or he can really run with it. And I think he's got a really good chance now with the 3 events coming up. He's got Wentworth, the Italian Open, and Dunhill Links to really get himself back in the mix. I've always felt that Molinari, after he started struggling, needed to get back over here. I know he made a big move family-wise to California, but this is a chance for Molinari really to get back on track. We saw it like Henrik Stenson last year. Like he was struggling for a long time on the PGA Tour, and then went 3 or 4 events back to back where he played really well. And I think Molinari has the opportunity to do just that at 8K.
Yeah, prototypical fairway greens, as like Wentworth as it gets, is Molinari. He was as long as 90s over here in the States, so we're not right. And I didn't anticipate to have as much long shot interest as we kind of do overall, and that's where I guess I'm a little worried when it is such talent at the top of the board.
Yeah.
But I mean, you play for places, you play for the opportunity where these guys, even a place at 90-1 is bigger than a lot of guys outright. So definitely intrigued to see Molinari tee it back up this week. When I keep going down the board, let's see if I pull into next golfer for me. Where did they price him at this week? I think he's a decent
get
bit
my
down there.
next one in first?
Yeah, he's higher than mine. Yep, talk you in for us because he is a standout too, I think.
Like Ewan Ferguson, for me, like this is a guy that is basically being priced, and it's been all weeks recently, really, and even this week, he's being priced like he can't carry it on. Now, he's won twice already. He was arguably unlucky to lose yesterday or 2 days ago on Sunday, which could have been his third win. And also, when you go back to Kenya earlier in the year, he was 4 shots clear going into Sunday. That's a tree-lined golf course. We kind of think about Ewan Ferguson being, potentially a better driver than anything else. Maybe in that same category as Burmester and Peters, but his irons have been absolutely fine. I mean, he's been first tee to green in each of his 3 of his last 4 events. So like he's just playing incredibly well. Top 2 tee to green performance, first, and 5th in 3 of his last 4 starts in tee to green, and 15th, 5th, and 2nd in strokes gained approach. So he's just got the ball on a string, and I'm just willing to see what happens. Like he hasn't played here before, so that's one potential negative. But we've seen with Patrick Reed, we've seen with Billy Horschel. I know they're probably better players, but like we have seen that the people that are in form can come here and play well. It is to start those Ryder Cup points. I think with all those kind of live things going on, he's a guy that's going to be trying to get himself into that position. And he now needs to step up and contend in one of these events. Like that's the next step for him. Like everyone sort of goes, he needs to play well in majors, needs to play well in WGCs. But this is the next natural step for him is to come and contend at Wentworth. And I think he's a great price to do so. I mean, what is he? He's 80-1, 90-1 in terms of the odds board and 7,600 on DraftKings. I imagine he's going to be fairly popular in his price range.
Yeah, I'm wondering. It's just a little odd. I guess not odd. It is a jam-packed range, I think is the best way to put it. Because I think a lot of people, if we go along with the course mantra, what we talked about, then Aaron Rai is going to pull a lot of interest. He's $7,500 for Rai. Rai has flashed a little bit, okay. I'm seeing a lot of popularity for Robert McIntyre. Again, you and I have been a little sour to his prices. It's a better price this week. They definitely make enough, and he showed a lot of life in Denmark from an iron standpoint. So he might be getting $7,800 there. Some interest. You get the former winner, Danny Willett, $7,900. So I don't know if Ferguson will end up getting as popular as he did, or as he could be based off that. Yeah. It's a little bit. I was trying to find, as we're talking here, Matt Wallace's price the year that he was winning all of those events. Now that's when the BMW used to be in May, so he only had 1 victory. The next year he went after his 3 wins. He was 28-1 at the BMW PGA. So he's kind of having that Wallace type of year where he's rattling off the being in contention and having those wins. Now those events also were probably a little bit stronger fields, that year but he was very miscut, bounce back to maybe have a top 20 and then win. So it's similar to that. And then Matt Wallace is right in this range too. Disappointing miscut last week after, he had lost in the playoffs. So I don't know, that range could get away. I actually think 2 golfers sandwiched around them. Also, I'm kind of intrigued on DraftKings. If we talk about potentially high range of outcomes, I'm starting to think these golfers actually have incredibly similar games too. It's Lucas Herbert and Kurt Kitayama. Both of them, I truthfully think, and they have shown on first page of leaderboards in major championships. Like Kitayama did it early in the Open Championship. Herbert did it in the Open Championship. Herbert's won big DP World Tour events. Kitayama's contended in them, winning twice. I think when you look at their statistical profiles, they're also really longer drivers of the golf ball. That's probably their best skill set outside of their short games. So if they can ever catch an iron week, I think $7,600 and $7,400 is very cheap for golfers who I think have as much upside as these guys in the middle of the eights. Now, their downside range of outcomes is incredibly, you might wake up and they're toast.
Yeah.
But you're getting bona fide PGA Tour players who had solid years that both finished inside the top 20 in the strongest event of the year in the BMW Championship on the state side. So I think those guys are intriguing. But I'm really going down deeper for next outright selection and kind of next golfer who I think is in the best ball striking form, potentially of anybody in this entire field, and it's Antoine Rosner. I mean, Rosner's game right now is a lot of irons and, above average accuracy. His driving accuracy at the Omega was so good. He was 20% better than the field average that week. Incredibly strong. So if he could continue that up. Now, we know the putter is the reason why. I mean, he literally missed 3 6-foot or less putts on Sunday when that would have got him into the playoff, if not won the event. So that's a disappointing feeling. But man, to have the consistency that he has from a ball striking standpoint. Now, one performance here made the cut, nothing promising, really from that one event. But to your point, could have he, shaken off cobwebs, got familiar with Wentworth? I don't really, when we get into this range, I mean, he's 110 to 1. He's $7,300 on DraftKings. He has just shown a form of consistency. Even if the putters, he's losing strokes to the field and finishing inside the top, 15 in 4 out of his last 7 events. Like, to do that, it's a lot to say with this ball striking. So I think Rosner is one of my favorite selections too of the week.
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly circle back to Willett. In the sense that I think he's a really good play. I think we've seen some life from him. There's a lot of crossover between Crancercier and Wentworth. He's been one of them, winning both of them, and he shot 64, 66 over the weekend there, and actually went 64, 67, 64, 66 to finish after opening with 70. So really strong performance there. And I think we see with Willett sometimes, as I sort of said at Dunhill Links last year, that like if you can get him back on a golf course that he's performed well at, when he's shown just a little bit of life, then it's a really good time to play him. Robert McIntyre, I think, is a better price this week and a fair price this week. I still think when you compare him side by side to Ewan Ferguson based on the ball strike and based on the current form, I thought that it sort of epitomised why I liked Ferguson. But I think in terms of big time, like I feel more comfortable playing McIntyre in a big time event than I do Ferguson at the moment, and that's that's a potential thing to think about. Going back to Rosner, I mean, he was the second guy in for me in terms of betting behind Ferguson. Like Ferguson, I actually found it more difficult to kind of price the guys at the top than I did the long shots. I thought Rosner was the best price of anyone. Like, I just love the fact. I've just mentioned the Crancercier crossover, and you'd already mentioned how well he played there. Like, you look at players, and I think a lot of this is based on how good these players are, right? But you see Nick Faldo, Seve, Montgomery, Donald, Jimenez, Willett and Noren all win at both courses. You've seen Francesco Molinari and Lee Westwood and Ernie Els have opportunities to win both and haven't got over the line in one of them, right? So is that because they're all the best golfers on the DP World Tour? Probably. I think that's one thing you have to preface with that. But it suggests that I think it's more the class of form and iron play rather than anything being linked to the actual golf course itself. Like, if you're performing the best and you're hitting the ball the best, then you will perform well at these golf courses. And I think Rosner's doing that. You mentioned he made the cut and didn't do anything last year. He finished 67th, but he shot a second round 65. And for me, that was like a massive indicator of what he could do in that form. Is he going to shoot 65 every day and win? Probably not, because of the way his putter's going. But very easily see a top 5, top 10 finish from him. And I think he contends with the ball striking the way it is. So I really do think that Anton Rosner is probably one of my favourite plays, definitely in terms of betting, and I think he's got to be right there for DraftKings as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought Shinkwin was somebody who I classified kind of like Burmeister in a way that, their off the tee game is defined by their distance, not their accuracy. And even though Shinkwin's longer outright and a better DraftKings price by a good bit, just the volatility. Obviously, he hasn't had any liking here, but he was 28s, but probably even lower than that 20s,
Yeah,
when he went
20s when he
off and
won.
won.
Yeah.
So to see that, and all of a sudden, literally the next time we see him, he's almost triple digits and low sevens. He could just have a very wide range of outcomes too this week, which is probably means he's a very good DraftKings play, overall. But you have to be able to stomach that. So golfers like him, like I mentioned with Kitayama and Herbert, I think I kind of fall and hit Rosner. Like those would probably be my picks in the sevens overall. You pointed
He
out
scares me, Shinkwin. Like he
for
does.
sure.
Like he's never made a cut here, never broken 70 in 4 or 5 attempts. Like he's been disqualified 1 year. That's different. But like I think you're right to say that like the driver is. And maybe that's what we need to keep in mind is that the driver probably doesn't help you much here as much as you thought. Like, it's better just to sort of lay up, find that fairway and really reward yourself with long iron play, which he can do as well. Like his iron play is fantastic. So again, we've got to kind of think about the fact that Shinkwin has won twice since he's played here most of the time.
Yeah.
So different player. Laurie Cantor at 7-4, Sky. What do we do about that?
I mean, he was
because
really
he's showing life.
Yeah. What he finished in the last live event?
He finished 21st in Boston, but he shot a 65 final round.
And he was solid ball striking at the Czech Masters.
Yeah, and 23rd there, and you don't know what's going to happen if he gets that final round, right? He went off the boil long before this live stuff, maybe because he knew this live stuff was coming, right? So it's hard to quantify what he's going to do, but I do think he's a little bit cheap at 7-4, and I think it's one of those ones where people are not going to play him because they don't want to, because it's
correct,
right? So I think there's an opportunity there. I also thought there was an opportunity at 7-4 with Tristan Lawrence as well. Yeah,
I mean, I would put him right in that Shinkwin, I guess, category of just playing excellent golf. Disappointed by the miscut last week, but coming off a win. It makes sense overall. But yeah, with Cantor, I mean, you get an elite skill set for that price. It is hard to kind of deny in that situation.
What I suppose with him is he's probably the epitome of what we said at the top of the show, though, that like he played well here and finished second and could have won because he was in really, really good form, was expecting to win the first time. Maybe because he's not in that form now, it's just not a good golf course. Because generally, again, he's another guy that relies on his driver. So, tough one. 7-3 for Fabrizio Zanotti is going to be a guy that gets you, a top 20, top 30. Pretty, I wouldn't say nailed on, but I think that's a fair person to put in as a reliable option.
Yeah. Yep. I think we can file into the sixes here. So John Catlin's at 6,900. You brought him up earlier. One of the more accurate, if not the most accurate golfer in the field from a DP World Tour perspective, but hasn't, to your earlier comments, you would have thought a golfer like him wouldn't be sitting here with 2 missed cuts in his 2 performances overall. So Catlin, I'm kind of skipping. When I go into my next outright selection, you mentioned him kind of off of the top with the comments that Kiradech Effie Barnrat made in regards to kind of tour life and how it's really hard on him and other guys who are not Americans and falling into that weekly travel, kind of the lonesome factor of it is. And so last time we saw Kiradech here at this event, what finishes second, coming in. I mean, he bookended 64s. He really gave it a run on Sunday. I would say you said Cantor probably should have won it. I would argue that, Kiradech really outside that Saturday was really bad from him. He should have won that. But what he really did was he excelled in the Korn Ferry Tour Finals. He fits the Dean Burmeister that last year's getting into here was what Dean is doing right now. He had a really good Korn Ferry Tour Finals, but I think there is some hidden form in what Affie Barnrat did over his last 4 events stateside. He was 5th going into the final round of the Wyndham Championship with 65, 63 in those 2 middle rounds. If I think of course comps, I said this today to Baroff and Axel. I was talking to him. If I could pick one golfer in the world, I said Answer earlier would probably be my fit for course battle. I think Tom Kim would be exceptional at a course like this, and that is because we saw him do it Wyndham Championship, I think, is very similar in the mindset of you can't overpower it. You have to play from the fairways. You got to play from the greens. So Kiradech being in contention at the Wyndham Championship, I thought was a strong indicator. It comes out the first event of the Corn Ferry Tour finals, and he is 13th through 54 holes, 66, 68, 66, struggled on Sunday. Then he does miss a cut in the middle one, and then on this past week, he was second going into the weekend. He shot an 81 on Saturday, and kind of the precipice of these conversations of it. But, so that's saying 3 out of his last 4 events, even though those finishes are not reflective of it, he was somewhere, near the mix for all 3 of those. So to pair that with the course history of a golfer like that, I mean, what outside of just even that second place last year, he had 5th place, has not missed a cut here since 2014. So I think, Afi Barnrat is one of those golfers that is a course horse, and if we're seeing a little bit of life, he just gets going with kind of that putter here. And I think there's a lot to like Kiradech at a price where you can take that risk. I mean, the outrights this morning, I think, were as long as 180 to 1. And he's deep into the 6s here. So I think, for me, Barnrat stands out a lot.
7 straight made cuts at Wentworth is no joke, right? Like that's a really strong performance. You don't see that from people very often, right? And when you look at, he was 27, so he missed those first 2 cuts the 2 times he played here first. Then he finishes 27th in 2015, where he was actually 17th for the 36-hole stage. He finishes 60th in 2016, but he was 8th after round 1, 6th after round 2, 21st even after round 3, even after shooting at 75, then just collapses on Sunday, 81. 14th in 2014, he was 2nd after round 1, 8th after round 3. 5th, to your point you already made, he was never outside the top 8. 51st, he was basically just 51st all week, so that was a pretty disappointing effort, and so was the 40th in 2020. But like the 2nd, 5th, 14th, the 27th, and even that 60th in 2016 just suggests that this is the perfect golf course for him, which seems a bit weird because you look at him as like a guy that mashes it off the tee, can get a little bit, kind of loose with it, and that's what happened with him down the stretch. He cannoned one into a house on 17. That was the end of it, right? But like, his touch is great. His short game, his imagination. Like I think that's what you need around here. And I really like Afi Barnrat. I think he is probably. I don't know if he's the safest. He probably is the safest in the 6K range. Like he's great.
Yeah. I think 6,800. As much as I want to, play another golfer at 6,800 and Guido Migliozzi here, who's caught some consecutive made cuts. But yeah, I mean, Afi Barnrat overall, I think is definitely very much in the play for DraftKings. And yeah, 7 straight made cuts here is no joke at all.
Two guys I just want to go.
You go.
Sorry, just because I don't want to move on too much further. 7-1 Sean Crocker. I feel like this is a guy that should have won last year. Well, not should have won, but like had a really good chance to contend last year and just hold nothing. And Masahiro Kawamura's guys, someone that we talked about a lot when we first started this show, 7,000 exactly, Kawamura. You look at his first 2 performances here, 20th in 2020. And he was inside the top 10 after 54 holes, and then 17th last year, where he was inside the top 10 for the first 2 rounds as well. So you couple that with the fact that he's actually showing a little bit of life right now. 14th, 9th, and 22nd his last 3 starts. 5th not that long ago at the Porsche European or the BMW International Open, Porsche European Open. Just really impressive, I think, for Kawamura. So I think if we're looking at Kawamura as what he was last year or the year before, a really impressive performer. So I really like Kawamura at 7,000.
Yeah. I think you can always kind of make an argument like that for Kawa. Now, is there any other golfers? I'll close out kind of with my last one in the 6Ks. I kind of cut off at $6,700. The only one that stood out, I think it's weird to see Garrick Higo at 6,500.
Yeah.
I mean, he just hasn't shown, anything to be but like, I mean, a full-time PGA Tour player at 6,500. I think Laporta will probably catch a little bit of love at 6,600.
As he should.
Yes. Yeah. He finished 6th here in debut. Very good last week.
He was a 54-hole leader last year as well, and shot a final round 70 in a contention of the biggest event on tour when he hasn't won. Like, I thought that was really impressive. So, yes, he will be popular, but I think it's probably warranted. I thought David Law was interesting at 6,700. He's played okay here in the past, and Matthew Southgate as well, 68. Justin Walters 69. I think there's some solid options down here that are less exciting than some of the ones we mentioned, but should get you through a cut.
Yeah, Southgate was one that I thought was interesting because if I think of greens and fairways, he's definitely a golfer up there, shown life the last couple of weeks. Definitely. So if we go in addition to the last selection overall, for me, I think I've been wondering for a good period of time where this golfer has been. Why is he not teeing it up? Because this was the best form that Sammy Valimaki has been in a very long time. I mean, he comes out, he's fourth at the Kazoo, where I think he was inside the top 10 for the last 3 rounds. Yeah, or no, it was the BMW International, 69, 66, 68, 67. And then 30th at the Irish Open, but he closed with a 66, opened with a 68. 24th in the Scottish Open, closing around 66. That was a big-time event for him. And then he comes back out where we're all pushed the chips in these 5th through 54 holes at the Kazoo Classic. 74 on Sunday was one of the more disappointing rounds of the year for me of golfers we've been in on. So for him to come back now, the kind of last factor to me when I looked at him and really was like, man, this time off is difficult to see, is he definitely, took a liking to this course when he was really in form. What was it, a 13th place finish? When we had him the first time here in Wentworth, and that was his debut, and in kind of his stretch of form, that was a really good year for him. So potentially in that same mix overall, I like that a lot for Valimaki. 250 to 1. He's got all the upside in the world, in my opinion, and he's 6,800. I think he's 68 or 6,700 on DraftKings, 67. So I just love that this week.
Yeah, and you see with Valimaki in that 13th place finish, like he shot a 67 and a 66, and then I think a couple of million rounds of 70, like 72, 73 maybe. And you see that a lot from golfers. Like Horschel shot 2 rounds of 65 and then rounds of 70. Like it seems to be that you're always going to get caught out by one day, like a 73 or 74. And it's just how you ride it, whether you can get a low enough round. A little bit like Barnrat, like he opened, I think, with a 64 and made a real charge on the Sunday. And that counteracts that 74 that he shoots on Saturday. Like you are going to have a bad day. Like it's probably going to happen, or you're going to have a middling day where you shoot 71, 72. So it's how you ride that out. And I think Valimaki's got the right temperament to do that, which is important. And like you say, that the last evidence we've got is when he was here he was pretty impressive. And he's now back in that form. I'm not going to do it. I was going to say, what do we do about Luke Donald? But it's just not worth it.
I don't know, man. It's not as bad as people would think overall, because he's 65.
We kept trying to play him on the PGA Tour earlier this season, like in DraftKings, right? Because his ball striking was there.
Yes.
65th miscut his last 3 starts at this golf course probably indicate what's going to happen this week with the added duties of Ryder Cup stuff and stuff like that. But this is a guy that's gone second, first on a 3-year stretch. I mean, he was like world number 1 at the time, so probably not needing to factor in. But again, I think that makes a very, very good point. Luke Donald, when he was at his best, always contended here, and I think any golfer that's playing well can contend. So I think just keep that in mind. Like, you can look at course form and yes, factor it in. If there's someone that's played here 5-6 times and never broken 70, then that should flash some warning signs. But if people have played it badly in the past but are now really in form, I think it's something to keep an eye on.
Yep, absolutely. I think it's a great way to put a close on kind of our thoughts. So if you can review your betting card one more time for us.
Yeah, so for me, Billy Horschel, I think he's probably about 22 to 1. We had some 25 to 1 over here, but that's about where we are with Billy Horschel. Tough one for me at the top. Francesco Molinari, not sure what price he is now. It was 80 to 1 at the time.
There's 90s still. Yep.
90s, so great. Yeah, I really like Francesco Molinari from there. Ewan Ferguson, again, similar price, 90 to 1. And then Antoine Rosner, I love with you at 110 to 1.
Yep. Amen. So Victor Hovland for me, 20 to 1. Abraham Answer, 37 to 1. Dean Burmeister, 66 to 1. Antoine Rosner, 110. Kiridash Appy Barnrat, 180. And Sammy Valimaki, 250 to 1. Best of luck, everybody. Again, big week, some huge DraftKings prizes out there. And as good as a viewing experience. And I mean, if you enjoy waking up to golf in the morning, you have big time players on. It is just as good of a week as you get of pure golf. I'm very excited to see. There's definitely a lot of emotions running high over the next few days. So I think it's going to be enjoyable on all fronts.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be a great tournament. And Sky, I've loved chatting it with you today.
Yes, absolutely. Good luck to everybody. And thanks again. We'll see you next week for the Italian Open, Guido's Italian Open next week. All right. We'll talk to you then. Thanks, guys.